Welcome to my channel. My name is Timea E Nagy. I know it's a mouthful, but you can just call me Timea. I'm an educator, advocate, best-selling author, and a survivor of human trafficking. My story reached probably over 500,000 people, but if you never heard of me before, it is most likely because those conferences were closed to the public for safety reasons. So here we go. I was born and raised in Hungary, Budapest, joined communism, and as much fun as it sounds like, it definitely came with some less than fun memories. My parents were the byproduct of the after Second World War generation, and they were only 6 years old when the Russians invaded Hungary in 1956. Needless to say, they grew up in extreme poverty with many unresolved traumas. When they became parents to me and my brother, I knew they tried their best, but we also grew up extremely poor. There was no running water, we used the public washroom in our building, and we never had enough food or money. Unfortunately, they also didn't have very good communication skills. They had a lot of mental health issues like borderline personality or paranoid schizophrenia and lots of stress around money. So they fought pretty much all the time. My dad ended up leaving when I was 9 years old, so the house was definitely quieter. But my mom's complete freakouts did not stop when the bills started to pile up again. And they did, every single month, like clockwork. I learned at a very early age how to freak out, be sick and terrified when the bills came. And I also accepted the fact that living in financial crisis is absolutely normal. By the time I was a teenager, I pretty much took care of myself and our family. I was 21 when we were about to be evicted and become homeless. It wasn't the first time, mind you, but it was definitely the scariest one. So I answered an ad in the newspaper, "Go to Canada, English not necessarily, young woman preferred." I signed up for the job, of course, what could possibly go wrong? And 2 weeks later, I was on my way to Canada. By all means, I should be very scared of these guys, but I wasn't scared of them at all. I was scared of being homeless. As soon as I arrived, they took my passport, took me to a motel and a strip joint, and I disappeared into the underground world of sex trafficking. My traffickers had 4 other girls. Our lives revolved around motel club, motel club, and making as much money as possible for them every single day. We worked 21 hours a day. We were barely fed, and we were threatened every single day about what would happen to us if we left. One girl disappeared, another died under suspicious circumstances. For the first time in my life, I made the most money ever. I made $40,000 that summer, but they took every penny. After 3 months of physical, emotional, and psychological terror, I decided to escape with the help of Canadian people who worked in the clubs. It's a long story, 345 pages to be exact. It's in my memoir, which, by the way, you really don't have to buy it. But if you choose to buy it, please promise me one thing. Just don't read it before bedtime, okay? But anyway, so after my escape, I couldn't go back home anymore. The mafia was looking for me for a long time. Canada took me in as a protected person, and I got a temporary work visa. I had to rebuild my life alone with no family, support, or help from anyone. But I did my best. I worked on 4 jobs, and you would think I would be loaded by now. Nope. No matter how hard I worked, I always ended up in the same vicious cycle. You guessed it. I was broke. Broke. So 10 years later, I saw an article in a newspaper with the headline, "Human Trafficking Victims Found." Thought to myself, wow, that sounds awful. It was a Russian girl's story, identical to mine. That was the first time I realized that I was an actual victim of this terrible crime. So it took 10 freaking years to realize what happened to me. There was a name for it. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't all my fault. So at that moment, I made it my mission to raise awareness to as many people as possible. I didn't have a plan on how I'm going to do it. I just wanted to help. And to my biggest surprise, after my first speaking engagement, doors just started opening left, right, and center. And honestly, the coming years were the most meaningful, humbling years of my life. I finally found my peace, but most importantly, I found my purpose. During the last 15 years of my time as an advocate, I had the honor to educate law enforcement, the UN, joining undercover victim rescue operations in the US, supporting victims and their families, advising the Canadian, US, European government, head of states, kings, queens, tech companies like Facebook and Airbnb, and occasionally presenting to and with famous people. I would have probably continued doing that for the rest of my life if I haven't had the second most absolutely mind-blowing, earth-shattering, life-changing realization of my life. The root of all evil is not money. It's unresolved trauma, including financial trauma. Have you ever heard that term before? If you haven't, it's okay. It's actually a new term. So, for over 20 years, I tried to heal myself. I read every book. I went to a million conferences. I tried to figure out how to stop the vicious financial cycle. And of course, I was starting to make good money. I started to feel better about myself. But I ended up being broke again. So broke. Honestly, it was just exhausting. And you know what? I started doing some research. Why is this always happening? What is the cycle? And through my research, I realized that I wasn't alone. Far from it. In fact, the latest research study shows that 65% of Americans are suffering from financial trauma. So during my research, I stumbled upon 2 new materials that offered a brand new way of healing vicious cycles and unhealed behaviors by using science and neuroscience-based tools. I spent the last 12 months implementing these tools, and all I can say that it freaking worked. Honestly, I swear to God on my mother's grave, it worked. I know there's so many people out there who is going through very similar experiences. So I decided to put this new content together based on my research, my experience, and all the tools that worked or didn't work. And guess what? I'm no longer broke. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but it's a true story. So what on earth are we going to uncover if you decide to follow me? Not that you have to. We're going to talk about generational trauma, childhood trauma, and the subconscious part of your mind, victimhood mindset, and finally, financial trauma. Kind of like a rehab for your money brain. But most importantly, science-based evidence and tools on how to reverse all the unhealthy programs. I'm so excited to share all this with you. So let's dive right in, shall we?